Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it?
Donald Trump's ever increasing cognitive decline is now so advanced that he has been recently telling on himself in public in the most damaging ways possible, and he did so yet again during an otherwise softball interview on the Fox propaganda network, in a way that may have major legal implications. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Alright friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video, and most of the clips are from a recent interview between Donald Trump and one of his chief MAGA cultists at the Fox propaganda network, Mark Levine. But before I get to those clips, just to set the stage, I want to show you a clip that was the centerpiece of a previous video of mine just a few days ago, in which, again, Donald Trump told on himself in public, undercutting 4 years of aggressive lying about the 2020 election.
10 or 12 million votes, more than that, more than anybody had ever got. We got the most votes of anybody, of any sitting president in history. And he beat us by a whisker.
So that was Donald Trump during a conversation with Moms for Liberty, a fiery activist organization, admitting that President Biden defeated him in the 2020 election. Remember, for years, Donald Trump has persisted. The election was stolen. I didn't lose, I won. I got more votes than anybody. I won California. And instead, note what he said. He said he got more votes than anybody. Corrected himself and said, well, we got more votes than any sitting president. Which, by the way, is true. As the incumbent president in 2020, Donald Trump did receive more votes in 2020 than any previous incumbent president. It's just that President Biden, then Vice President Biden, got more votes, 7 million more votes, which is more than a whisker. But he corrected himself. He actually told the truth. He is now in such a state of cognitive decline that he briefly had a moment of honesty and undercut 4 years' worth of lies, and admitted publicly that Joe Biden beat him. Not the first time, by the way, that we have record of Trump admitting that he lost to Biden. Very rarely does he even hint at it in public, but if you look at the Jack Smith indictment, special counsel, Jack Smith pertaining to the January 6 insurrection and the attempts to overturn the free and fair election, the case filed in DC. Jack Smith list multiple examples in the indictment when he admitted to AIDS. Trump admitted to AIDS that he lost President Biden. And on that subject, Donald Trump just told on himself, yet again, pertaining to the same case, the DC Jack Smith. January 6th, 2020, election theft conspiracy case in his just absolute cognitive implosion. Donald Trump told on himself yet again. See if you catch it.
Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it, you get indicted and your poll numbers go up. When people get indicted...
Donald Trump just admitted that not only was he indicted for election interference, which that's one way to put it. I mean, it was it was conspiracy to defraud. The American people was multiple counts of conspiracy and fraud, but overall they call it the election interference case. Well, he just admitted to it. He's like, who knew that you could get indicted for election interference and you have every right to do it? Donald Trump just admitted that what he did was election interference, see. Again, usually he is so pathologically dishonest and he's relentless about it that he'll say, oh, I didn't interfere with the election. I was just protesting the outcome of a stolen election. But here in that softball interview with Fox propagandist Mark Levine, he admits he was indicted for interfering with an election and admit that he did it, but says that he did it because he had the right to do it. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu said, "Dear Atre Donald Trump, are you seriously the stupid? You think President Biden has the right to interfere in the upcoming election? Do you want VP Harris to do what you tried to get former VP Mike Pence to do? Are you really this dumb? Also, interfering in elections is illegal." So he dunks on him there at the very end for, say, basically admitting to the thing that he was alleged to have done and has denied doing. But then he also points out something that we pointed out on this channel, and I pointed out in previous conversations and debates with conservatives, think about this. If you think that incumbent presidents or just politicians in general have the right to intervene in an election and try to steal the results. Well, Joe Biden is the President of the United States. Now does he have the right to intervene in the election on Vice President Harris's behalf? Vice President Harris will be presiding over the certification of the 2024 election on January 6th, 2025. Come hell, or high water, win or lose, she will be presiding over the ification of the ballots. Donald Trump, if you win the upcoming election, should she be able to interfere with the election? Should she be able to do, as Ted L. says, what you wanted Mike Pence to do? What about in 2016, the election Trump did win? Barack Obama was the sitting president of the United States. A Democrat, should he have interfered? Joe Biden, the current vice pres, or the current president of the United States? The Donald Trump's chief political opponent was the vice president. Then he was in Mike Pence's position. Should he have just tossed out the votes? Like, this is the issue with MAGA Republicans. They don't think about consistent standards. It's just whatever you can say or do to benefit Donald Trump. That's all that matters. And that's why so much of this I have so much contempt for, and I encourage others to have contempt for it too. Like, it would be one thing if you had this radical interpretation of the Electoral Count Act or the Constitution. Like, you genuinely believe that any vice president, Democrat or Republican, effectively had the right to toss out ballots. That would be insane, but if you were consistent, we could at least say you're honest. We could at least say you have an honest interpretation, even if it's grossly incorrect. But that's not what MAGA Republicans do. MAGA Republicans don't say, oh yeah, absolutely, Vice President Harris and, Vice President Joe Biden and, Vice President Al Gore all had the power and have the power to just toss out the votes. Of course they do. Instead, what you get from MAGA Republicans like Trump is Democratic vice presidents don't have the power or the right to do this. But Republicans do. It's inconsistent, it's pathetic, and it should be mocked relentlessly. And if you actually go on Twitter, social media, people are quote tweeting this, and they're having a field day with Donald Trump's stupidity on this topic. But wait, there's more. As a matter of fact, from this conversation with Mark Levine. So that was the biggest one, in my opinion, the terms of the almost verbal confession. Yeah, I interfered with the election. I had the right to do it. Like, that was the worst of it. But there were plenty of other stupid moments from this Mark Levine interview.
Now, this is the United States. When it came to Hillary, you remember they subpoenaed her stuff, and she BleachBit. That's where it's basically acid. Now this is.
So Donald Trump is under the impression that, and he's done this before, he has used BleachBit as a software tool, which will sciata the remnants of like deleted emails, deleted files from a hard drive. Because according to computer experts, even if you delete something, there are still like traces of code and things in your hard drive. Well, BleachBit is a software that people can use to totally scrub your hard drive. But it's software. It's not acid. Donald Trump is always under the impression that, that she dunked the hard drive and acid. And Med Hassan Progressive Commentators has pointed this out. What's worse, that he moronically says an email deletion program is acid because the name sounds acidic, or he keeps saying it years after he has been publicly and repeatedly corrected on it. His brain is broken. And indeed, it is some other standout moments include Donald Trump actually being concerned about the well-being of his ex-vice president, Mike Pence. But under circumstances, that might surprise you.
But I agreed to all these things that I normally wouldn't agree to. Now they have Kamala, who they say has many deficiencies, but she's a nasty person. The way she treated Mike Pence was horrible. The way she treats people is horrible.
Interesting. So think about that, Donald Trump. He's referring to the upcoming presidential debate on September 10th with Vice President Kamala Harris on ABC. And he says, the vice president has so many deficiencies, but Trump's team is the one who wants to keep the microphones muted because they're worried that Trump will be Trump. and he will just impulsively heckle and interrupt and lose support among viewers, which is what happened in 2020 when he did it with against President Biden. That's Trump's team. Then he talks about how nasty she is and how nobody likes her and she mistreats people. I should remind you, I mean, my God, if we spent the time talking about the number of people who used to be close Trump supporters, either in the entertainment industry or in politics, who have since come out and oppose him because of his terrible personality and his, authoritarianism. Basically, his treatment of both his staff and, more importantly, the American people, we'd be here all damn day. And just again, talking about the personal insults, these things are not doing well for him in the polls. I understand that that's his impulse. And new advisors, well-returning former advisors like Corey Lowski, are feeding that vicious impulse in him. Just attack, 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 and not on substance attack personally, and it will reflect an electoral victory. The polls don't reflect it. It didn't help him in 2020, not helping him right now. In the polls in 2024, so I'm glad he's doing it because it's going to help undermine his chances of victory. But just really weird stuff. And also, again, you're concerned for Mike Pence because you think the vice president was rude to Mike Pence in their 2020 vice presidential debate. I'm sorry, didn't your supporters try to hang him? Didn't they literally erect gallows on the Capitol grounds on January 6th, didn't they? Barge and burst and break into the Capitol seeking him out, chanting, "Hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence." And you knew about it because you watched it unfold for 3 hours from the White House, knowing that Vice President Pence had to flee with his Secret Service detail because of a riotous mob of your supporters were coming to kill him. And you didn't call them off. You didn't condemn them. You didn't even call in to check on him. You were actually tweeting that he had failed you. And just this idea that it was Vice President Harris treated Mike Pence terribly and not Donald Trump is absolutely ridiculous, and the lack of self-awareness is staggering. There are several other clips I wanted to say. I think we're going to skip to this one though. And it's really not about Trump per se, kind of is, but it's actually about Mark Levine, who is a Fox propagandist. We don't really cover here. He's like Tucker Carlson, where we just don't spend a lot of time on him. He, I think, is in many ways even worse than Hannity. Hannity and Trump are particularly close. I don't know if Levine and Trump are as close as Hannity and Trump are, but in terms of his delusion, this is Mark Levine talking about Donald Trump and Donald Trump's religious faith. This is how he describes.
You've been a man of faith. You go to church. You believe in God. Has this further your belief, your commitment?
He's struggling to get the words out because he knows how categorically ridiculous they are. Listen, I'm a firm believer in separation of church and state. I don't think that any American politician should be obligated, it should neither be a plus nor a minus that they have some sort of Christian faith or any religious faith whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I think we should normalize aggressively, normalize the idea of openly secular politicians. They're good religious people. They are bad religious people. There are good secular people. There are bad secular people. None of that should matter. It's really about the values, not necessarily what the sources of them are. But Donald Trump is not a Christian. We know he's not in his personal and public conduct, both in his youth and now, at 78 years old. He is as egregiously anti-Christ as one could possibly be. You read the New Testament in particular, and all the teachings of Christ, and Trump is on the exact opposite side of that. What's funny is Mark Levine, again, struggling to try to say these words with any degree of credibility about the most profoundly un-Christ-like person in American politics, whereas at the same time, President Biden, a devout, lifelong Catholic who attends Mass, even while he's president, he attends Mass every Sunday. Mark Levine and conservative commentators and pundits, they don't think that President Biden is religious at all or a man of faith at all or whatever. And And to the extent that some will acknowledge that he is, they give it absolutely no weight, right? Whereas they will twist themselves in knots to try to say, yeah, Donald Trump, you're a man of faith. You go to church. I mean, I'm sure Trump has driven past one time or two, but it's just so funny to me that that's how pathetic this MAGA movement is in this respect. Is it's not enough to simply support Trump. It's not enough to say, hey, listen, I know Trump isn't a Christian. Obviously, not personally. I think he's a terrible, 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 despicable person. However, I'm voting on policy. That's also kind of ridiculous to say that as a Republican, given Trump's terrible record, but you could justify it so much better. Maybe not sufficiently, but better than saying, actually, yeah, I'm voting for Trump. Not only because of policy, but because he's a man of deep faith and conviction. The only conviction that Donald Trump has are the 34 handed to him by the New York penal system, the New York legal system. So anyway, I just thought that clip was particularly cringe. Yeah, there you go. Donald Trump's cognitive decline on full display. He's telling on himself repeatedly in public, and that one in front of Mark Levine might carry with it potential legal implications. Jack Smith should certainly, if he's able to make hay of these statements by Donald Trump, admitting that he lost to President Biden, admitting that he did interfere in the election. He just thinks he has the right to do it. I hope that there's a way by which Special Counsel Jack Smith can make hay of this, should the case ever come to fruition in DC. And in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.